getting close to the end of my holiday break. I'm taking a little break from the car, which is over there. I need to continue working on the wooden frame on that, but the weather's been really bad the last few days and I need to do that outside because I don't want to get sawdust everywhere. So it was a good time to stop and just have a little rest from the car because I've been working on that pretty hard. So I decided to start stripping down this motorcycle, this KT250 Kawasaki. I don't know anything about motorcycles. I do have manuals for this one, which is good because that'll make it much easier than the Riley. And looking at it, it's pretty straightforward. There's not a lot to them. So obviously this is a trials bike. It's designed for going slowly and balance and agility and things like that, I guess, rather than flat out going as fast as you can between the trees sort of thing. This one has been used by a farmer. It's been modified, so the kickstand's all been modified. I'm going to have to fix up whatever's going on down here. I do have a new actual stand for it. I just need to figure out how the mounting is welded to the frame there. It's had a few other modifications. So this looks like a farmer's modification, which it's about hard to do with one hand. But basically that locks the clutch in place. So I'm guessing so the farmer could stop and didn't have to take it out of gear. They can just sort of... There we go. You can just sort of lock the clutch in place like that. And you just pull it and it releases. I might leave that on there. It's a part of the bike. What else? The fuel tank I've already taken off. That was really rusty. I had to repair the bottom off it and I've repainted it. So these are my piles of old parts and new parts, new tires over there. This is the fuel tank. I didn't film any of that. I basically got the dents out of it and it had been all bashed in at the back here because somebody had fitted the wrong kind of seat to it. So to get the seat to fit, they just basically taken to this with a hammer. So this is beaten out as best I could, and then there's filler on there to build it up to the shape. It's not perfect. I just sort of got a paint match that was reasonably close. I didn't try to get it perfect. This is just going to be a sort of muck around in the garden sort of bike. It's not going to be a perfect restoration. I'm just kind of make it tidy and running. So the tank, that's done. I might need to polish the paint a little bit. I've done a few other little things. So this is the headlight and rear light. This was all beaten up. I fixed all of that. This is the headlight bucket. So I cleaned all that up and painted it. So those are sort of parts that are ready to go back on. But obviously I need to strip the whole thing down. I'm not going to strip the engine. The engine's got really good compression and it runs fine. I have taken off and stripped and rebuilt the carburetor. But the engine itself, I'll probably leave alone. When I've got it out of the frame, I may have a look at the clutch and see if I need to do anything in there, but I'm not going to take the cylinder head off or anything like that. There doesn't seem to be any need to. This bike still has its oiling system. So it's a two-stroke, and this is a little oiler. On the other side of the engine there's a tiny pump, and it feeds oil into the carburetor, I believe, or into the inlet up here. And in the manual it explains how you test that, and that was one of the first things I did, was I actually tested that to make sure that it was actually oiling. Apparently what a lot of people do is they disconnect this and they use premixed fuel in them. But if this is working, I think I'll use that. I've sprayed everything with penetrant to try and make some of the nuts and bolts easier to undo. But some of them are already proving to be difficult to get off. These ones, the the nuts on the underside are totally rusted, and so they've just stripped. So I may have to angle grind those off. Things like the shocks, I should be able to take all of those off. I may end up replacing those. You can get new shocks for these things. Maybe, I don't know, I might just wire brush those up, see how they go. I've got a new chain for it. I've got a new rear sprocket. I should have a new front sprocket coming. I'm not quite sure how you get the grips off and things like that. I'll take all of this off. I've got new handlebars for it. But at the moment, it's just going to be a matter of completely stripping it down and refurbishing everything. There's some things I want to do, like the kickstarter's all worn out. I did replace the spring and the ball in there. The spring was broken. That's meant to lock in place, but you can see it just flops around, and that's because there's so much wear. If you pull it to take the wear out of it, oops, you can hear it lock into place. It's just that there's so much wear, the ball isn't even rolling into the little holes for it. So that's something to fix. The exhaust looks really good. It's rusty, surface rust obviously, but hopefully it's solid all the way through, and that'll just need a clean and paint. The front forks, now they could be a problem. I do have new seals for it. I think I've got a couple of sets of those now. And these dust covers, I've got new ones of those. That should be on the way, hopefully. Need to chase those up. I think they're coming from the UK. There is pitting on the forks, but I have heard you can just sort of get the rust out of them, polish them up, and you can fill it with something. I've got some special epoxy type stuff, and I'll probably fill the gaps with that, and then you polish it smooth. It only has to be a smooth surface so it doesn't rip up the oil seals. I think all the aluminium will come up nicely. I just quickly hit that with a little brass brush and that came up fine. The pedals, not the pedals, the levers, sorry, you can tell I'm a car person. The levers are also a bit worn out. I think you might actually be able to replace these. I'll have to have a look at that, but I'm not sure if they're the same. One's obviously been bent, I think. Clutch is the same. Front forks, as I say, I've got new seals for them, so I'll at least replace the seals, but I'll just pull them apart, give them a clean, give them new oil, stuff like that. Like I say, I'm just going to putt around the garden and over in the next door neighbour's field. He's a farmer, and so he's got a big property over there, and he's like, yeah, sure, you can, no problem, just pop over, ride around the fields if you want. He obviously knows about bikes. I think he said he used to race bikes back in the day, so he seems to know all sorts of tricks about them. But the other thing I'm not quite sure how I'm going to fix up are the spokes, which have a bit of surface rust on them. So I should be able to clean all of that off, and then I don't know if you can paint them or what you would do with them. As far as I know, the wheels run true. I'll probably have to measure that. But the other thing I have on the way are new brake shoes. There's a sort of indicator on here. I have new inner tubes. Probably need to get new rim bands, I think they call them, that go inside there. These things, these seem to be special things to help keep the tubes in place or keep the tires on or something like that. I don't quite understand how these work yet. Hopefully that becomes clear when I get inside there and open it up. What else? I'm still trying to figure out if it is a 75 or a 76. Apparently you can tell by the number. It's a bit hard to see. It's K12 07268. Bit hard to tell. But yeah, this is the fun bit, is just stripping it down. Well, when I say fun, it's fun if everything comes apart easily. If things break, that's a problem. The good thing is I think all the fasteners on this are metric, so if I have to replace fasteners, that's not going to be a big deal, unlike the Riley where everything is Whitworth or BSF. And basically I'm going to start taking things apart, and what I end up doing is putting everything into little labeled bags so I know which bits of hardware go where. But that's going to be the start of it, I think. So it's about 2 hours later. I have the bike almost fully stripped, apart from the rear mudguard, because the nuts and bolts that are holding it on, they've all rusted on the inside, and there's a metal bracket under there, which means you can't even easily get mole grips on there to hold it while you try to undo the bolts. So those are going to have to be cut off. And I haven't removed the rear shocks yet because they're held on with these special screws, and I don't know if there's meant to be a special tool that you use to undo these. I'm assuming if I reuse these shocks, of course I'll be reusing those. I don't know if you can get new ones or not, so I need to figure out exactly how those come apart. And let's see, Milo's been helping me. Everything else came apart pretty easily. The steering, this was quite loose. This was almost just finger tight. I went and got the special C-spanner and found I didn't need it. There's ball bearings in the top. I'll probably replace all of those. I'll have to check the bearing race, but it looked pretty good. The grease looked pretty old and crusty, but there was grease in there. It's a taper bearing at the bottom. That seems to have a bit of, I'm not sure if that's grease or a little bit of surface rust. I'll see how that cleans up. The front shocks, they came apart okay. Of course, never having seen one of these, I've no idea how they're supposed to feel. So I'll rebuild those. Again, it probably doesn't matter for what I'm doing, as long as they kind of work and don't leak oil. The chain, it took me, this is so filthy. It took me quite a while to find the master link so I could get that off. But I managed to get that off, and I would say this sprocket's pretty worn out. These are pointy. I don't think they're supposed to be like that. The brakes all came apart fine. When the new brake shoes arrive, I'll be able to compare and see what they look like, how it compares from a worn one to a new one. And the engine lifted out pretty easily. I did have a problem. I was using my impact driver to undo all the bolts. Normally I would do everything by hand, but since I've got this new DeWalt one, I thought I'd give that a try. And of course it works brilliantly. So it seems to be, you're far less likely to damage things using that than trying to do it by hand. But after the first one, it actually stopped working. It started sort of freewheeling. I don't know if that's kind of a safety feature or something, but it wasn't spinning anymore. And I kind of played with it a bit, and I gave it a bit of a knock just on the end, and it started working again. So I'm not quite sure what's going on there. It's been fine ever since. But to get the engine out, I ended up getting out my compressed air driven impact driver, which is far more powerful, and that got the 4 engine mounting bolts out. But all of the bits are in bags. Wiring loom looks pretty good. There's a few repairs and things that'll need to be looked at and redone probably. But if I can get the shocks off, the rear mudguard, that'll be easy enough. I'll be able to cut those off, hopefully from the inside, so I don't damage the frame. But the frame just needs a good cleanup. There's a bit of surface rust on it, but that's about it. There's no major dings. Even the skid plate's pretty straight. So the frame I should be able to clean up and paint pretty quickly. I'm still waiting for the front sprocket. I do have a new rear sprocket and the rear sprocket and the spacer, because these original sprockets are dished, whereas the new ones are flat. I'll also check out all the bearings and things like that, all the wheel bearings. I'm imagining those, again, are probably just pretty common sizes. Not like trying to find some of the ones in the Riley or an Austin 7. So I'll have a look and see how much new bearings cost, just because if I've got it all apart, it's easy enough to replace them. So that's sort of where we're at the moment.